podcast here on our new home at That Hashtag Show Network. As always, brought to you by Neff Vodka, and reminding you to please drink responsibly. My name is Ben Cleaver, and joining me today is the con guy himself, Jim Fry, the world's greatest sidekick, Cheeseman, and of course the Jacobus system, Jake Jerley, regular contributor to theconguy.com. How are you guys doing today?
Excited to be talking to our guest today.
Amazing. I need a bigger podcast.
2020 may have shut everything down, but sharks can't catch COVID-19, so Shark Week still reigns supreme as it has for over 30 years. This week, the con guy is celebrating the granddaddy of them all, Jaws. Jaws was released June 20th, 1975, altering our trips to the beach forever. So to help us celebrate this milestone, we are honored to be joined by a living legend who was key in creating this monster, Mr. Joe Alves. Welcome to the Con Guy podcast, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you.
So before we start, I'm going to get some of your bona fides listed out here for those folks listening and watching at home. Joe is a production designer, art director, and producer for film and television. His work includes Sugarland Express, Jaws, Jaws 2, Escape from New York, Free Jack, Starman, the television series Night Gallery, and the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, for which he received an Academy Award nomination and won a BAFTA. He's also the second unit director for Jaws and Jaws 2, and the director of Jaws 3D. His career spans over 40 years. He's now 20 years retired. Joe, what do you have to say for yourself after hearing all these things?
Seems like a lot of work.
That was some job security there, I would say.
Yeah. Well, it was a good time. It was, things just happened at the right time, met the right people, a series of events, meeting Spielberg on Night Gallery, and then doing his first three films. I did 3 television shows with him. The Psychiatrist, did a few episodes, and then Sugarland Express, Jaws, and Close Encounters. So that was a good start.
Now, before we jump into talking about Jaws and our Shark Week feature this week, can you tell us? I guess this is related, but can you tell us a little bit about your book that you have out now? There it is.
Okay, there we go. All right, this book was written by Dennis Prince, and Dennis worked for Hewlett Packard for many years. Wrote a lot of technical things, and we met on a show because he had written a book about model making and Aurora. And anyway, we talked about doing a book, and he mentioned Jaws. I said, well, there are a few Jaws books. Then we ended up doing sort of a biography, which we haven't sold yet. And then we did a shorter version of this for Catalina Island. They had a shark, they had a Jaws at the museum exhibit for 6 months. And so we did the book, and then Titan bought it, and we expanded it, made it hardcover. But what I like about the book, what Dennis wrote, and Greg Nicotero, who's a big Jaws fan, he does The Walking Dead, he wrote the foreword. What I like about it is it talks about the backside of making movies. Most films, books are about the actors and the directors, but this is really about how it started with design, the effects people, and all that backside.
Nice.
Interesting. Now, in your book, you talk about how what you do as a production designer, what you pull off is truly movie magic, but it's not just trickery, it's an art form. Is that right?
Well, yeah, in designing, as a film designer, you could be doing sharks one, month, and you could be doing a Victorian living room the next, or a futuristic thing. So whatever script you get, you break it down and you sort of visualize what it needs, and depending on the budget, allows you to either build things or find locations. So it's a process of reading and then working with the director, his concept, and then the budget will determine how big you go with it. So that sort of explains that pretty much in the book.
Now, one last thing that you mentioned in your book, you say that your mentor, Frank, is it Arrigo? Is that how you say his name?
Arrigo.
Arrigo. He told you to think more like a director than a designer. How has that stuck with you and affected your work over the years?
It was incredible because with Frank, Universal was bought by there was a television company that made television, and Frank had worked with that company before they came to Universal, and he had directed a lot of little television shows. But he thought about it as a director. In other words, you're reading the script and you're not thinking necessarily of little architectural details. You're thinking how you would capture that mood, what you needed, what would best express the kind of set that would best express the mood of that particular script, But with Frank, we did the last Elvis Presley show, Change the Habit, and we also worked on Hitchcock's Torn Curtain. So we had quite experience together.
Yeah, Joe, when you guys were kind of pitching the idea to make Jaws, you had the task of, in a way, director sense, kind of like visualizing a lot of the key action sequences.
Yeah,
let me explain. They're all over the book. They're fantastic.
If you look, for an example, just the book, these sketches. All right, now they're based on the galley sheets of the book before the book came out, and so I went through that. I'll try to do this quickly because I've done this so many times. David Brown, his wife Helen Gurley Brown, had read this galley sheets of this new young writer, Peter Benchley, and she was the editor of Cosmopolitan magazine, and he was sort of a literary guy. And she said, "I think this would make a good movie." So they didn't have a charge number. I was working at the studio at that time. Was the studio. And you were like a staff art director or a staff cameraman and sort of did what they assigned you to do. So he said, could you in your spare time take this galley sheets and create visuals based on the shark activities in the book? So I went to the head of the art department and I told him, and he said, yeah, David Brown, Dick Zanuck, they're big producers. Just find the time to do it. So basically, I didn't get paid to do it. I did it in between my spare time doing a television movie. Anyway, so I went through it. I did about 30 of these charcoal drawings, which depicted all the activities. And then we presented it to all the heads of the department and in Marshall Green's office, who was the head of production. And that's how this started.
Cool. Hey, Joe, would you mind just kind of letting us know before we go too much further, where can people get your book?
Oh, Amazon.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could. It's on Amazon. It's not very expensive. They lowered the price from the little one we made, and so I would highly recommend it if anybody's interested in Jaws. I mean, it's there because you hear a lot about stories about Jaws that I could go into. Like they used the barrels because the shark wasn't working. That's not true at all. You could see in these early sketches based on the book, there were barrels. The barrels were very important, and I painted them yellow. So they were a suspense thing to use, like a Hitchcock thing. Instead of showing the shark all the time, we didn't not show the shark all the time because it didn't work. There's some like 200 storyboards in that book, and the ones that have the shark, we got all the shots that we wanted. It just took a while, and I'll tell you why it took a while to get the shark working.
That's a super interesting story because I've always heard that it was because the shark wasn't working. That's really cool to know that.
Absolutely not true. Okay, first of all, let me just say this. Stephen was not on the movie when I started. But we were friends. I used to go over to his cabana there at the studio, and I was showing him shark pictures and my drawings. And he said basically, and I've told him this before, that if we do this, we want to do a full-size shark, a big shark in the real ocean, not in a pond or back lot with a phony looking backdrop. So that was the intent. And we had come up with the size of 25 feet. And that's because an ichthyologist that I was working with said that the perfect shaped white shark is 12 feet. As they get bigger, they get fatter. So we doubled that. So when we presented that to all the department heads at Marshall's office, Stephen has now gotten onto the movie, and the effects department said they've never done it before. They've never made a shark like this. And if they did, it would take a year and a half to make and test and all that. So they didn't do it. And as I was leaving the meeting, Marshall Green, who happened to live on a boat and sort of liked the idea of this movie, said, "Can you get the shark made?" And I said, "I certainly could try." So basically, that was October 3rd when we had the meeting. I put together, made Bob Matty. There's a good page in there where I met with Bob, and he brought back a little wire thing showing how the shark would open its mouth and stuff. And so we probably put together a crew of 7 guys. Probably November, December, we started finding a place to build it off the lot. So we really didn't get into really good construction till late December. The book came out in February of '74. So they had probably worked on the shark maybe 2 months, if that. And the studio said, we're going to start shooting this in 2 weeks. I mean, in 2 months. So basically, the shark didn't work because we never had time to test it. We didn't have the year to make it. After about 4 or 5 months, and Steven shot everything without the shark, we basically would try it, and I would go to Bob and say, "What shark do you think is working?" He says, "I think the left to right." I'd go to Steven. He would go through the storyboards that we had worked out and said, "Okay, that would be 185 A, B, and C." And I would say, "Okay, if it works, we shoot it. If it's not, it's a test." So basically, that was the problem. But we got every shot that we had planned. The idea that the shark didn't work, this whole thing, so that's why they didn't use the shark so much. Absolutely false. And the barrels, I painted the barrels yellow so they would stand out. And the barrels represented the shark. When you see the barrels pop up, you know what's down there. It's the shark. So it's a sort of a Hitchcock thing, don't show everything.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Joe,
yeah.
You talk about in the book, there's a moment where you say how, you had designed the shark and everything, and then you had a chance to kind of run the controls for a little bit, but then because you weren't in the effects union, they said you couldn't run the shark or something like that. Was that what it was?
Yeah. It's funny because they got very union wise. I worked with Bob a lot, and I worked, much more than a production designer generally does, but I pretty well, I did a sculpture. You could see it in the book. I did a 4-foot clay sculpture. I had an ichthyologist, Leonard Campagna from the Steinhardt, San Francisco, work with me. So we got it really right on. And then we doubled it, made it 25 feet, basically. And so I got into the very visuals of it, working with Roy Arbogast, who was very into all the new plastics. And so, they had to get different plastics that would stretch and not break, and foams that wouldn't absorb too much, and then paint it with 40 silica sand so it wouldn't beat off like a balloon. So, yeah, I was really into it. So when we actually started working it, I was working the controls to see how it would move, this and that. And then one of the effects guys said, "No, you can't work it. That's my job." So I said, "Okay." Because it was interesting. Ron and Beverly Taylor were very, very instrumental in looking at what we were doing. And I remember at Verna Fields, who was the editor, and we had shot some tests that we made, and we were talking to them on the phone. They're in Australia, and Valerie said, "Joe, you're moving the shark too much. White sharks don't swim like that. They just sort of glide along, you know." And so we restricted that. That's why it was very important who was operating, that they got the idea. Don't wag the tail too much. When it comes into the cabin or gets quint, you know, then we move it quite a bit. So we had, you know, Ron and Valerie Taylor did Blue Water, White Death, and they were very, you know, experts on white sharks.
Nice.
Wow. Now, you mentioned Hitchcock in there. Did I read somewhere that you actually worked with Hitchcock?
Oh yeah,
at some point?
yeah. That was a picture called Torn Curtain with Julie Andrews and Paul Newman, and it was Hitch was a very interesting guy. He would get up, you know, we used to wear sport coats and ties. That was the dress code. He'd wear a black suit, black tie, and we'd meet at the coffee on the set, you know, the coffee machine, not where they had the coffee and donuts, and then he would tell very unfunny jokes. We'd have to laugh, you know, but.
And like me.
No, it was a great experience. Let me just say one thing about Hitchcock, because only a few directors that had this quality. We would build half sets for Hitchcock. In other words, if you had a guy coming in a room, goes over to their door, blah, 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 that's what you would build. I said, what about the reverse shot? What about this? No. You know, Mr. Newman comes down the stairs, goes over to the registration desk and leaves. Yeah, but how about, you know, the reverse? No, that's it. And where a lot of directors would have you build so much, and then they would get on the set and figure out how they were going to shoot it. That's a waste of money. You really should do storyboards and plan it before you build it. So what, you know, so you're not building stuff you don't use. Mm-hmm. Anyway, Hitch was very, very good, very, you know, disciplined. He used to be an art director before he was a director in England.
Interesting.
Now you worked with Rod Serling as well, right?
Yeah, I did. 3 seasons with Rod Serling, and that was incredible because a lot of young directors, Steven Spielberg, Janos Schwartz, John Badham, did a number of movies and things with those guys. But what was interesting is that from a design point of view, I would do like 25 sets a week. I mean, it would be 3 different episodes or 2 episodes with 2 directors. So I was going crazy. I mean, just designing sets, you know, and they would vary, you know, from something like a log cabin to a futuristic set. I did a futuristic thing with Vincent Price. And then, you know, it was just, and yeah, it was a great experience, and a lot of old actors that, you know, were in it.
Hey, Joe, I heard you had an interesting start as well, like back with Disney.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing. I was at the Chenard's Art Institute, which is now Cal Arts, you know, up in Valencia. Mm-hmm. But Chenard's in the 50s was quite a prestigious art school. And I had grown up in the Bay Area, went to San Jose State for a year. And I was always interested in art and music. I played piano and I was always, but I had seen a movie called American in Paris, and I was just blown away by it. And then I found out it was not made in Paris. So everything was made on the back lot at MGM. And I said, boy, that's what I want to do. In any case, I met Chenard's. I finished the second year there, and I needed a job, so I didn't have to go back home. And a friend of mine said, oh, my wife's father works at Disney. And I said, oh, okay. So I figured I'd go there. Maybe I can get a job sweeping up. So I called him, and he happened to be the guy that hired the artists. So basically, I didn't think I was ready. I said, bring your portfolio. So I brought my portfolio, and he says, you're too late for the training program where they learn how to draw Mickey Mouse. I'll put you in special effects. So I went where they do fire and wind and all this stuff. So I went in there, and generally you start as a trainee, and then you're an in-betweener for a year or so, and then you're fortunate after a couple of years to become a breakdown artist, and after about 4 or 5 years, you're assistant animator. Anyway, long story short, if I could make it short, I was working with Marion, and I said, what do I do? And she said, you look at this glass, table, and you flip the pages and draw in between. So she was working for Dwight Carlisle, who was working for Josh Metter, who was the top animator of special effects. He did Nine in Bald Mountain. He did The Fire of Bambi. And he was doing a special contract for MGM for Forbidden Planet. And he was drawing the id, the creature that, Yeah. Anyway, after a few weeks, she had to leave for some reason, and I started working directly for Dwight. So I jumped being a trainee and an in-betweener, and I was a breakdown artist after a couple of months, and then I was working for Dwight drawing the id, and then Dwight had to go to the hospital, and I was working as Josh's assistant. So within a few months, I'm going from this I was 19 years old, I'm drawing the id, and so that was quite an experience, and I stayed there for a couple of years, and then I really wanted to get into live action.
Hey.
But yeah, it was unusual.
Now, Joe, you said that was in what, the mid 1950s?
1955.
1955.
That was the year that Disneyland opened in June of '55,
Right.
and it opened the first day just to all the employees. And Ronald Reagan was there, and Jeff Chandler, and actors of that note. And so yeah, 55, and I left there in 57.
Wow. So let's fast forward 15 to 19 years to the early 1970s, and you're working on Jaws. Let's jump into the meat of the matter here. Now, you already talked a little bit about how you had been working on sketches and storyboards for the Sharks, and you had shown them to Steven. What was the process going from there when you start getting Steven interested in it and you guys get on board and actually getting into I guess we already talked about building the shark and all that kind of stuff. What kind of different versions did you work with? Did you come up with different fin shapes and that sort of thing? Like the fin is iconic. It's on the cover of your book.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
did you go through different designs for that?
No, we just made a shark. We made a white shark.
You just built one.
We communicated every detail of it. I mean, if you see the full size, it's gigantic. If you look at the back of the book, you'll see that there was a shark that Greg Nicotero is repairing because that was a junkyard shark. That what happened was the studio had no confidence in this movie at all.
Right.
We were on schedule, over budget. And so when we got back, they threw the sharks in you see, okay, so that's the junk. So that was a shark, fiberglass shark made from the original mold, so that when there it is, looking really bad, and there's Roy Arbogast. So what happened is it hung there for years at before they made the shark ride, so then it disappeared and ended up at this car parts lot. I mean, yards and junkyard. But it's where you buy parts for. Anyway, so it was hanging there for some time, and this guy Cory Booker, who is from NPR, and he called me and he said he wanted to look at it and see if it was really made from the original mold. And that's that picture with Roy Arbogast. And I said, yeah. And then a couple of years later, I got a call from this woman, Julie, who was running the new motion picture museum. They're doing a big museum, spending millions and millions of dollars, and they wanted to refurbish this and hang the shark in the museum. So that's when I got them with Greg Nicotero, and they redid it. But people are blown away to see just how big that thing is. So all the detail here, I mean, the teeth were actually the same. Here's the thing. You could measure the teeth measure a shark by the size of the teeth. So if a 12-foot shark would have a teeth like that, 25-foot shark would have one like that. The Carcharodon megaloidum, which would extinct now before the great white shark predecessor, it had teeth about that big. So I was very upset when the studio made the shark ride and they put these banana teeth, But everything is so accurate. I mean, the teeth are right on, and we made molds, and we had to make a lot of teeth because they would break. And then when the shark bites Shaw, we had to put rubber teeth in because it would really hurt him. So, but it was no, that was it. Then what we did is we made. For other shots, we made the fin just so we could go faster because that big shark, couldn't do it. And progressively on Jaws 2, we made a faster fin. On Jaws 3, we made a very fast fin because it had to chase water skiers. So, but we did basically we did 3 sharks. We did a right to left and a left to right. Because if you see in the book, there's a shot of the backside of the shark where you see all the mechanisms. So obviously the camera's got to be on the other side. So that's left to right. And we would go through the storyboards and see what shark we were using. And then the big shark, I mean, it's the same size, but the important one was on a big platform that would sink on a track and then it had a big crane arm, and you could take it and land it on the boat or go into the cabin and stuff like that. So basically, that was it. Three sharks.
Going back to the going back to the teeth real quick. In your book, you say how after the shark eats Quint and then is coming after Brody, you see all this flesh on the shark's teeth, and I guess that was your idea to put that on there.
Yeah, Steven said, "What the heck is that?" Well, there was a lot of squid on my thing. And we used squid when we blew up the shark and put it in the head that we blew up. But I had squid on the teeth, and Steven said, "What's that?" And I said, "Well, that's Quint. That's got in his teeth."
Oh, poor Robert Shaw.
So I heard that the people working on the set would often steal the teeth to take out to the bars to impress the ladies or other people.
Yeah, we found a lot of missing teeth because guys would go to the bar and they would pick up girls because they had the shark's teeth. And so we'd come there and they're doing missing teeth. So Roy Arbogast, who was making the teeth and stuff, he made so many teeth, yeah.
And basically, you had a team of 7 people known as the Magnificent Seven that you had help you with the 3 sharks. Is that correct? Yeah,
that's how it started. I got Bob Matty, and then we needed somebody who really knew the new skins, and Roy Arbogast, who's in that picture there with the old shark. He was making breakaway bottles, and he knew all of the new plastics. So his responsibility was to make the molds, to make anything that was the visual skin. And then we had the Wood brothers, Michael and Gary, and they were really quite good in welding. So we needed to do all the chromoly tubing welding. And then Richie Helmer did the electricity. And then we had a few other people, but we started off with just Bob and 6 other guys. So I called them the Magnificent Seven.
That's cool.
That's awesome. You had talked about the big shark, quote unquote. They were all the same size, but the big one that wasn't the left or the right, and it was on the barge, and you would sink it into the water. Were you part of the team that would go out and scout the ocean to figure out where the best spot is to sink this barge and shoot these scenes, or can you describe a little bit of that process?
Yeah, basically, here's what Bob's platform would sink. He used the barrels, the same kind of barrels, and you would flip them down, and they would get water, and they would sink. You flip them up, and the barge was quite large. I can't remember, but many feet, maybe 100 feet, 80 feet, or something like that. But he said he needed a bay with a flat bottom and 25 feet of depth. So when it went down, it came up. We can't have a big high tide. Hopefully a 2-foot tide, so that if the tide came down too much, you'd see all the mechanism. Or if it went up too high, you couldn't get the shark out of there to see it. So when I scouted, met Peter Benchley in New York and went through the whole process of where he wrote this and why, this and that. But he didn't have any specific place in mind other than to go to Nantucket and see his parents. And I asked him about the vineyard, and he hadn't been there. But when I scouted all over the East Coast there, and Long Island and the Cape. And when I tried to get Nantucket, and the weather was too bad, and the boat turned around, it was a Woods Hole. There was a boat to Martha's Vineyard. So when I went to Martha's Vineyard, and I saw Edgartown in Menemsha, and then I saw this bay, and I checked it because I had nautical maps, and it showed 25 feet, and the tide was 2 feet. And I thought, this is perfect. So that's basically, we shot everything in that same area. We moved it around because of boat traffic and things like that. But the vineyard was great because of 2-foot tide.
Let me ask you a question. After all this work and putting all this together, what was it like seeing the shark for the very first time in the water? What do you remember what that was like?
Well, there wasn't not like a really first time, because it was a process of getting it and doing. I mean, here's the time when there was a left to right shark. I went to Bob, was one of the first shots. And I asked him what was working, and he said that. And Steven said, okay, we'll do that shot. Now, it's the shot where they're high, and you're looking down, and you see the shark come by the boat. And you see how it's almost as big as the boat, and it just moved so incredibly smooth, And I thought, oh, my God, that thing really works, I mean, it was like a whole process. So you don't really know. I'll just tell you briefly, when the shark would be working, like on Quint, it'd make all these strange sounds, the valves. So when Steven said cut, the crew would all laugh.
Oh, no.
And so I was just afraid that, when we put the movie out, the audience is going to laugh at the shark, because the studio treated it like, it was nothing. They weren't crazy about it. As I say, over budget, over schedule. So when we had a screening in Longdale in Southern California, it was the second screening. And the first screening, we had 2 more shots I could add. So I'm waiting there in the audience, and I'm thinking they're going to laugh. Well, they screamed and screamed. And the executives, Lou Wasserman, and they all went away into some restroom, and they reorganized the distribution. So they generally didn't release pictures more than a few theaters at a time, but they opened it up at 450, which was a huge amount, as the most. Wow. And that started the summer releases, because they used to release important movies around the time of the Academy Award, Right. Mm-hmm. So that made a big difference. One quick story. Steven came back from the first screening, and he said, Joe, we got 4 screens. I think we can get 5. He said, if I can get the head, Ben Gardner's head coming out of that hole when Dreyfus loses the tooth and goes down. And he said, we don't have that shot. So I built that in my backyard. And another shot he wanted with show me the way to go home, boom, boom, when they're singing. And the shark is hitting the boat and it's starting to break up and water. So we shot that in my driveway with a hose and a camera that somebody had stole. And then somebody had stole the head out of the makeup department. And I made the hull. And we went to Verna Field's swimming pool, who was the editor. She won the Academy Award. And Kevin Pike helped me build it. He was a local that became an effects guy, quite good. And so we shot the hole, and then the head came out. Well, that was his fifth scream. I got to tell you, when that showed up on the screen, everybody just flipped out. So, but
and it still gets the same reaction. Even like just a few years ago, seeing it in the theater, the head coming through, like all those big scare moments still play to this day. Everyone screams.
Yeah, and I just want to point out, as big as the movie is, and it still goes on after all these years, I shot in my backyard and one in Verna's pool. I mean, it was a small movie, It was difficult, but it was a tight group of people that really wanted to get this movie made. Bill Gilmore, Verna Field, obviously Stephen, Zanika Brown, myself, and a few other people. But most of the crew got really, really tired because I got to tell you, you're sitting out on a boat and you're just sitting there for hours waiting for the shark. Let me just say this. It's not just the shark. We had boats coming because I scouted this in the winter, and in the summer there were just boats all over the place. And Stephen wanted them totally isolated. He didn't want to see any boats out on the horizon because he wanted them to be, they broke the radio because they're just those three guys and the shark. So that took a lot of time, but you have to anchor the Orca in 4 anchors, and you have to anchor the camera barge and the effects barge. So it's just, you sit there for hours and hours hoping you get a couple shots. So the crew was getting batty. They were getting pretty batty,
Quick question about filming. So you did some second unit director filming. Did you do the Alex Kittner scene? I think I heard something about that.
Yeah, I did that. That was the shot. Stephen was getting tired, and we had just finished a shot of the shark coming through the cabin, and we had 3 little breakaway windows, and everybody was really freaking out and tired. And Stephen said, I got a shot we didn't get that I'd like to get is the shark grabbing the Kittner on the float. So we got a dummy and a float, and I directed that. Everybody pretty much, Stephen had left, had a small crew, and we had a couple kids in the foreground. I don't think David was in that shot, but that's the kind of shot, with the young 6, 7 year-old kids. And then the shark comes up and grabs the little, yellow pontoon thing. It's on the float.
Was that a different model that you had in there for the shark that came up and grabbed him? Because it's almost just in silhouette. You just kind of see this body and this fin.
It was a dummy. It was just actually it was a woman. It was a dummy you see at a store, that they dress. But you couldn't tell because we put a bathing suit on. I wanted to shoot it in backlight. I wanted the sun to read, so that all you saw was just sort of a big splash up and the thing's gone.
Right.
And then blood. Yeah.
And there's like a horrifying picture in the book, I think, or somewhere I've seen with kind of the dummy in the shark's mouth, like that. Like it's pretty scary looking.
Yeah. Well, it was just a dummy,
Hey Joe, so the rumor is that you're the person who has the most props still left from the film. Is that true?
Oh, I don't know. There's a lot of people Jim Bello, Chris Kishka, they bought a lot of stuff. What I have is all my original stuff. I kept, and if you could see in the book, it's absurd. I kept all my drawings, all my illustrations, all my storyboards. I kept, like, I didn't know Dennis was going to put it, but my script breakdown, you see all those yellow pages, I kept that. I even kept a note there that says, which was really weird. The lady that used to answer the phones for us at the art department, and it was a note there that says, that's a breakdown. The note said, meeting in Marshall's office, 10 o'clock, October 3rd, pre-Jaws. So that was the very first meeting of Jaws, October 3rd. And I kept that piece of paper. And what else? So that stuff I have, but I did, physical props. I don't know, like some people have the cage. They got this stuff. I don't have any of that. I just have the stuff that I did, basically.
Nice.
Speaking of props, just about a year ago, I noticed for the first time there's a scene in Jaws 2 when after Brody gets fired and he comes home and he's drunk and he's kicking the beer cans and everything. There are the barrels outside of his house that are the two barrels. I assume that him and Hooper rode in on. Is that right?
I'm sure that's why we put him there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that was.
I never noticed that until someone online and one of the Jaws fan sites or someone posted that, and I was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe I never saw that."
Originally the script was that Hooper Hooper dies, so it was just, and then we got this great footage of a live shark stuck in the cage from Australia, and so we wrote the script, which is great because I think when he comes up and they go off together. I think it's a good ending, that they both lived.
Oh, it's the best. And hey, Joe, before we don't want to run out of time though. Before we do ask you a little bit about Jaws 3. You directed Jaws 3. How did that come about?
That was interesting. Verna Fields actually was responsible in some respect. I was doing a movie with Irv Kershner called The Ninja. Worked on it about 6 months, and then they canceled it because Fox was bought off. It was a Fox movie. I came back to see Verna. I used to always go to hang out in her office. And she said that they had been doing this movie called Jaws 3 People Zero. And it was basically, Joe Dante was going to direct it. It was a satire making fun of all the people that made Jaws. So they were going to make a joke out of the people that made their biggest movie. And from what I understand, Stephen became aware of this and got pretty upset, that, wait a minute, you're going to make us a joke because we had difficulties? So they canceled that. There was a script and all that. And Alan Landsberg, who was a sort of a low-budget television producer, bought the rights to Jaws 3D, or Jaws 3. And so Verna said, Joe, go talk to this guy, try to save the franchise so he doesn't do a cheap ripoff, Jaws thing. So I went to talk to Landsberg and I said, we got to build shark. Oh, no, I got a lot of stock footage to shark. He was really going to do it cheap. Anyway, he said, but you want to produce it? I said, no, either I direct it or I don't want to do it because I directed 85 days of second unit on the second one. And if I was going to do anything, I was going to direct. So anyway, with Richard Matheson, the writer, I went and scouted these theme parks, water parks, and I saw this underwater display, a little film of going through underwater seaweeds and stuff. And I came out with the idea of Jaws. And Richard said, what, Jaws in 3D? I said, no, Jaws 3D. So basically, I was taking the 3 and making it D, and taking the onus off of the second sequel because they weren't doing many sequels. So that was how I got the job. They got very excited about this might, get much interest. But then the dilemma was the cameras were old. We had to make new cameras. I was working with a very low budget TV guy. I had a good crew, really good crew. and Leah gave her first part.
Yep.
And Dennis, and so that worked out really good. The problem I had is I didn't have Final Cut, so they did cut about 25 minutes of my more personal things, and they just wanted to get the shark stuff. So it was good though, but it did extremely well.
Yeah, we watched it just last night. It's still a fun show. It's a fun film.
It's definitely fun to watch. I'd love to see it in 3D. But
In 3D,
Yeah, I love Jaws.
It is interesting to watch it on. I was watching it on Hulu before we did this interview, and then the internet went out in mid Los Angeles, so I couldn't finish it. But just the scenes that are clearly meant for the 3D, like the first attack when the guy's arm just floats towards camera.
Yeah, it comes at you.
Yeah.
And
But
the snake, where they're in the girls are walking through this thing, and there's a snake that comes out, and
right.
the problem I have, the biggest problem with 3D is this. I wanted the shark, Simon McCorkadale's in the shark, and I had to build a 35-foot head, much bigger than the original. And he's holding this thing, and his partner say, pull the pin, and I wanted the shark to come into the audience. But here's the problem with the shark. It has a fin. And when you go in 3D, as soon as it breaks the frame, it comes back again. So I had to do this. So if it was like a snake, it'd go right out to you. But that damn fin.
Oh no.
One of my favorite things about Jaws 3D is the soundtrack. The music is great. It's such a great, iconic. Theme song
it worked. It was hard. It was very difficult. I got the critics jumped all over me. It was very difficult. Camera stuff, the old cameras, so we had to make new cameras. And a lot of pressure from the low budget.
Well, I'm sure Jaws 3D has a huge fan base. It's become a cult classic over the years. And
it's special to you,
personally for me, I was going to say personally for me myself, that was my first experience with the Jaws world as a kid growing up and loving sharks and everything. A quick little story. My dad was like, well, one day, I was a little kid. He's like, one day I'm going to show you this movie Jaws. You're going to like lose your mind. So I'm like, okay. So finally the day comes and he goes to the video store. I know I'm dating myself with the video store thing, but he goes and rents the VHS tape of Jaws, comes home and opens up the container, and inside was Jaws 3. Someone had put, I guess the guy in the video store put the wrong one in there. So it was like, okay, well, I guess we're watching. So that was my first experience with Jaws. And I just want to thank you because ever since then I was hooked.
I just find a lot of film people that are probably in their mid-50s. My writer is a mid-50s, Greg Nicotero. A number of directors were like 10 years old when Jaws came out, and they were 12, 13, 14 when Jaws 3. So they were able to. So yeah, it stuck with them, and I've had meetings with various directors and of that age and that period, and they were very influenced by those three movies.
Because what's scarier than a 25-foot shark? A 35-foot shark.
Yeah.
This one's
I had to fit Simon into the head, so it had to be big.
All right, so Joe, we are kind of coming up towards the end of our podcast. I know that we have something called the lightning round, where Luke has 5 questions that he asks really quick, and this is just first thing top of mind. So he's going to ask you 5 questions real quick. Go ahead, Luke.
All right. So yeah, you can have more than one answer if you want. But first question is favorite character in Jaws.
Oh well, it got to be Shaw.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, Quint.
Yep.
He was incredible character.
Yep.
Very good choice. Second question, favorite line from the film.
Oh, we're going to need a bigger boat.
Yep. Amazing improvised one for sure. And question number 3, favorite scene in any Jaws movie.
My favorite scene in the Jaws movie was the 3 guys in the cabin.
Yep.
you know, that made the movie, the relationship of the three.
And we did already actually talk about this. Do you own any of the props or particular merch from the films?
Well, I do have the when there was a shark we made for Quint Shack for the Win, thing, and so I have that. It's a
Nice.
bronze shark. So, yeah, I know people would pay a lot of money for that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sure Greg Nicotero.
Weather vane. It's a weather vane thing. It was on the very top of Quint Shack. It was
Okay.
about a 3 foot. So yeah, I have that in the backyard.
Yeah. And question number 5: favorite day or memory filming Jaws?
Favorite day. I can't think of a favorite day. I mean, without getting personal. Because there was a girl that I met on the island. She was in the movie, and we went together for about 6 years after that.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
There's Jaws magic then.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
swimming with bow-legged women.
And one final bonus question just for you. What was your favorite shot in any of the films of the shark?
The favorite shot of any of the sharks. Wow, that would have to take some thought, but I would say offhand the shark coming into the cabin.
Yeah,
That's classic.
I love that one.
It's awesome.
Cool shot.
Well,
So much. Hey, Ben, why don't you take us on out of here then?
yeah, absolutely. I was just about to say, we are unfortunately out of time. We didn't even get to touch Close Encounters. We
I
didn't get
know.
to touch. We didn't get to touch Escape from New York. You know, we had so much more to talk about, but unfortunately, we're not going to get to it today. We'll just have to have more interviews with you, Joe. That's just the long and short of it.
Close Encounters basically became a much bigger movie as Jaws became bigger, and then our budget got bigger, and Steven's concepts got bigger because of the relative movie that we made before.
Right.
So nothing like success to help you increase your success in something else.
But then can I just sneak a question in just because Close Encounters is one of my favorite all-time films? Joe, that gigantic set that you created, if you can give us a real quick summary, what was that like creating such a gigantic set?
It was huge, but basically the studio said everything was going to be done in the back lot or on the set. And so they showed me a stage, 15 and 16, and that was where they shot Camelot. And I said, well, it doesn't look big enough. And so I made a model and I showed the executives and everybody. They said, oh, you don't think it's big enough? I said, no, it should be 4 times that. So basically, I made a model 4 times that. And then they said, where are you going to shoot it? And I didn't have a clue. But I found a hangar, and it was 300 feet wide, a football field wide, football field long, and I extended it another 150. So basically, it was 450 feet long and 300 feet wide. And it all had to be covered because we had to control the lights for the special effects and everything.
Oh,
It
great.
was big.
That's
And you
wild.
discovered the Devil's Tower, the actual mountain that was used in it. Like you went out and found that. And
Yeah, I found that. I drove 3,000 miles looking for strange mountains. And I looked at I looked at Chimney Rock and Ship Rock and all these, and then I found Devil's Tower was perfect. It's just the shape,
That was great. So iconic.
It was,
Bum,
it was
bum, bum.
All right, Ben, we're going to give it back to you.
I was just going to say, bum, 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 bum. Well, Joe, thank you so much for being on the show today. You honor us as fans to be with us and let us ask you questions today. You are, as I said at the top, you're a living legend. You created the monster that started it all for many of us. So thank you so much for your work on that, for your contribution to our imaginations and our growing up and our love for movies and storytelling. And so again, thank you for being on the Con Guy podcast today.
can I just interject this? If people
Absolutely.
want to see my storyboards for sale and things, I mean, not that I want to sell, but the fans, it's at www.joealvesmovieart.com. And I just say this because I have copies of original storyboards and stuff. I don't make that much money out of it, but collectors, I think, would really like to have them. They knew.
Absolutely. And again, you can get the book Designing Jaws on Amazon.
Right.
And it's an incredible book. And thank you so much again. Jim, where can people find you online?
You can go to Twitter and find me on Jim Fry LA. It'll say Fry Guy on there, but also just follow us here on theconguy.com. We try to bring you the best stories like this with movies that we love, conventions that we love, and just people like Joe. What a great guest! It's been one of the best guests we've ever had. Please follow us and share us with all your friends, guys.
Cheeseman.
Hey, I'm Cheeseman, real last name. You can find me on theconguy.com and on Instagram and Twitter at CheeseOnCouch. And Joe, I just want to say I take great joy in introducing Jaws to just my family. I show them all my sister's kids. They get to see it the first time with me. And just a week ago, I got to show my youngest niece. She was 4 years old, and my nephew, who's 7, saw it for the second time. And the jump scares still work. My nephew even squeezed push popsicle onto my dad because one of the jump scares in it. So it's a movie that's timeless and will continue to entertain my family, and I look forward to sharing with my children someday if I have some. And I'm sure Jake will probably even when it's a baby.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
And speaking of Jake, where can people find you?
Oh, you can find me on Instagram at the Jacob Assistant.
All right. And I am Ben Cleaver. You can find me on all social media at BENKLIEWER. This has been the Con Guy Podcast's Shark Week Celebration 2020 here on That Hashtag Show Network, brought to you by Neft Vodka. Please drink responsibly. And this has been our interview with the one, the only, Joe Alves. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, guys. It was great. Enjoyed it.
All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching today's episode where we interviewed Joe Alves. Be sure that you check out his book, Designing Jaws. It's available on Amazon. And while you're checking things out here, go back and check out yesterday's episode where we interviewed David Bigelow and Joe for their project, The Return of the Orca. And please go check out that project. Donate if you can. It's for a wonderful cause, educational, entertaining. And be sure to stay tuned this week to theconguy.com and our Shark Week celebration series on Jaws. Tomorrow, we talk to Jeffrey Voorhees, Alex Kittner himself, the Kittner boy from Jaws, and we interview him directly from the beach on Martha's Vineyard, where he met his demise. Later on in the week, we've got interviews with Jeffrey Kramer, Carl Gottlieb, and Greg Nicotero, and those will be a blast. You do not want to miss them. So thank you so much. Be sure and tune in tomorrow and the rest of this week.